For months, fans have been asking the same question. What actually happened between Taylor Swift and Blake Lively? Why did two women who appeared inseparable suddenly become the center of endless speculation? And perhaps most importantly, was there ever an attempt to repair whatever reportedly went wrong behind the scenes? Because according to reports, many people expected a conversation, not a public statement, not a dramatic social media post, just a private phone call. A call that allegedly never happened. Now, before we go any further, it's important to separate confirmed facts from rumors. Neither Taylor Swift nor Blake Lively has publicly confirmed the details that have been circulating online. Much of this story comes from reports, unnamed sources, and ongoing speculation. But what has captured everyone's attention is not just the idea of a friendship strain. It's the suggestion that there was a moment when reconciliation seemed possible, and then nothing happened. And that's where things get really interesting. Because if a call was expected and never came, what does that actually mean? Was there hesitation? Was there disappointment? Or was the entire situation far more complicated than anyone realized? The answers aren't as straightforward as they seem, and some of the most intriguing details emerge later in the story. Before we get into those reports, take a quick second to like this video if you're enjoying celebrity news deep dives, and don't forget to subscribe so you never miss the latest Hollywood developments. Now let's get into what may be one of the most talked about friendship mysteries in entertainment. For years, Taylor Swift and Blake Lively appeared to represent one of Hollywood's strongest celebrity friendships. This wasn't one of those celebrity connections that existed only for red carpets and social media photos. Fans watched their friendship evolve over time. Blake attended events connected to Taylor. Taylor referenced Blake and her family in ways that delighted fans. Their connection seemed genuine, comfortable, and surprisingly low-key considering how famous both women are. That history is what makes the current report so fascinating. When celebrity friendships fade, people notice. But when a friendship that appeared this close becomes the subject of reconciliation rumors, people pay even closer attention. And here's the thing. The emotional stakes were already high before reports about a missing phone call entered the conversation. Because friendships are different from business relationships. They're different from professional partnerships. When people become emotionally invested in a friendship, every perceived distance suddenly feels meaningful. Fans began analyzing everything: appearances, interactions, public support, silence. And as speculation intensified, questions started multiplying faster than answers. Was there really tension? Were people reading too much into normal life changes? Or was there something happening behind the scenes that the public simply wasn't seeing? According to reports, those questions became even louder as various narratives began emerging from different corners of the entertainment world. And that's where the story started becoming far more complicated. At first, the rumors seemed like typical celebrity gossip. A report would appear, a source would make a claim, fans would debate it online, then another report would emerge that appeared to contradict the first one. Suddenly, nobody seemed entirely sure what to believe. One report suggested distance, another suggested misunderstandings, a third implied there were larger issues influencing the situation. Yet none of these reports came with direct confirmation from either Taylor Swift or Blake Lively. That uncertainty created the perfect environment for speculation. And every time a new report surfaced, a new question appeared alongside it. If there was tension, what caused it? If there wasn't tension, why were so many stories emerging? If the friendship remained intact, why did reconciliation rumors exist at all? Then came the detail that transformed the conversation: the phone call. Not just any phone call. The call that some reports suggested people expected would happen. The call that allegedly represented an opportunity to smooth things over. The call that reportedly never came. And suddenly, one missing conversation became the centerpiece of an entire celebrity narrative. But why would a single phone call matter so much? That's where the story takes another turn. According to reports, expectations surrounding this alleged reconciliation call became significant because it symbolized something larger than the call itself. A conversation can represent effort. It can represent accountability. It can represent a desire to repair a relationship. Or, in some interpretations, the absence of a conversation can send its own message. Again, it's important to emphasize that neither side has publicly confirmed these specific claims, but according to various reports, some insiders believed communication might eventually happen. Many observers assumed that if there was any strain between the two women, a private discussion would be the logical next step. Instead, reports began suggesting that the anticipated outreach never materialized, and that detail spread rapidly. Because once the public started focusing on the missing call, the conversation shifted. People stopped asking what happened. They started asking why nothing happened. Those are very different questions. One seeks a cause, the other seeks an explanation for inaction. And in celebrity culture, silence often becomes a story all by itself. But here's where things become even more intriguing. Not everyone interpreted the reports the same way. Some believed the absence of a call indicated a deeper issue. Others argued that nobody outside the friendship actually knows what communication has taken place privately. After all, celebrities don't live stream their personal conversations. The public only sees fragments, which means an entire narrative can form around information that may be incomplete. And yet the reports continued. The speculation continued, and the mystery only grew. As the story spread across social media, fan reactions became impossible to ignore. Some fans expressed sadness. They remembered years of friendship moments and hoped reconciliation would eventually happen. Others questioned the credibility of the reports altogether. Without public confirmation, they argued, nobody truly knows what conversations have occurred behind closed doors. Then, there was another group of fans who became deeply invested in analyzing every new detail, every article, every source, every insider quote, every public appearance. The result was a divided online conversation. One side saw the reported missing phone call as meaningful. The other saw it as potentially overblown speculation. And then there were those who believed the truth probably existed somewhere in the middle. What made the debate so intense was the emotional investment people had in the friendship itself. Fans weren't just discussing two celebrities, they were discussing a relationship they had watched develop for years. That's why every reported update felt important, and every unanswered question felt bigger than it otherwise might have. But social media wasn't the only place where competing narratives emerged, because according to reports, insiders appeared to have very different versions of what was happening. Some sources claimed reconciliation remained possible. Others painted a much more uncertain picture, and those conflicting accounts only deepened the mystery. According to various reports, insider claims have become one of the most controversial aspects of this story. One source might suggest disappointment, another might suggest distance, a third might indicate that circumstances have been misunderstood entirely. The challenge is that anonymous sourcing creates uncertainty. Sources claim things, reports publish them, fans discuss them. Yet the public rarely has access to the full picture, and when multiple insiders appear to offer different narratives, the situation becomes even harder to interpret. Some reports have suggested expectations existed for outreach. Others imply assumptions may have been made by outsiders rather than the people directly involved. That distinction matters, because a friendship can appear strained publicly while remaining functional privately. Conversely, a friendship can appear perfectly fine publicly while facing challenges behind the scenes. The truth is often more complicated than either version. And that's why the alleged reconciliation call continues to attract attention. It functions almost like a symbol. People aren't only discussing a phone call, they're discussing what the phone call represents: connection, distance, repair, missed opportunities, or perhaps something entirely different. And the longer uncertainty continues, the more room there is for competing interpretations. Which brings us to the question everyone keeps asking: why might the call reportedly never have happened? This is where analysis becomes necessary, but speculation must remain speculation. One possibility is that reports are simply incomplete. It's entirely possible that private communication occurred in ways the public doesn't know about. Another possibility is that expectations surrounding reconciliation were exaggerated by media coverage. Sometimes a narrative becomes so widespread that people begin treating assumptions as facts. There's also the possibility that both women have chosen to handle any personal matters privately. That wouldn't be unusual. In fact, it might be the most unsurprising explanation of all. High-profile friendships often face intense public scrutiny. Every interaction becomes news. Every silence becomes evidence. Every rumor becomes a headline. Under those circumstances, some people prefer to communicate privately rather than publicly. Another factor worth considering is timing. Even when people intend to repair a relationship, it doesn't always happen immediately. Life gets busy, emotions evolve, priorities shift, and conversations that outsiders expect to happen right away sometimes take far longer than anticipated. Of course, some observers interpret the reports differently. They see the alleged absence of a reconciliation call as evidence that distance remains. But again, that interpretation relies heavily on reports rather than confirmed statements. And that's an important distinction, because in celebrity news, certainty is often much rarer than people think. Still, regardless of which interpretation proves closest to reality, one thing is undeniable. The reported missing call has become the central symbol of this entire story, and symbols tend to take on lives of their own. So where does everything go from here? That's the question generating the most curiosity right now. Could reconciliation still happen? Absolutely. If reports about distance are accurate, friendships have recovered from far more challenging situations before. History is filled with examples of friends reconnecting after periods of separation. In fact, some relationships become stronger after difficult conversations finally take place. On the other hand, it's also possible that the relationship has simply evolved. Friendships change, people grow, circumstances shift. That doesn't necessarily require drama. Sometimes relationships look different than they did years earlier. Another possibility is that the public eventually discovers that many assumptions were incorrect from the beginning. Wouldn't that be a twist? Imagine months of speculation leading to a reality far less dramatic than the headline suggested. It's happened before in celebrity culture, and it could happen again. What makes this particular situation so compelling is the uncertainty. There isn't a definitive public statement that closes the case. There isn't a clear timeline that answers every question. There isn't a confirmed explanation that everyone accepts. Instead, there are reports, sources, claims, interpretations, and a phone call that reportedly never happened, at least according to the narratives currently circulating. Whether future developments confirm those reports or challenge them remains to be seen. And that's exactly why people continue paying attention, because the story feels unfinished. Every new report seems to raise another question rather than provide a final answer. Every explanation appears to leave room for another possibility. Every insider claim seems to invite a competing perspective. And perhaps that's the biggest reason this story has captured so much attention. People naturally want closure. They want certainty. They want to know what really happened. But sometimes celebrity stories don't offer clean conclusions. Sometimes they remain suspended between competing narratives, and this may be one of those situations. For now, what we know is relatively limited. Taylor Swift and Blake Lively shared a friendship that many fans admired. Reports later suggested tension or distance. According to reports, some observers expected a reconciliation call. Additional reports claimed that call never came. Beyond that, much of the story remains subject to interpretation, speculation, and unanswered questions. And maybe that's the most fascinating part, because years from now, people may remember this story not for a public argument, a dramatic statement, or a viral confrontation. They may remember it for a phone call that allegedly never happened, a phone call that became a symbol of a friendship mystery, a phone call that left fans wondering what was really happening behind the scenes. So what do you think? If the reports are accurate and the reconciliation call truly never came, does that suggest a deeper rift? Or could the entire situation be far more complicated than outsiders realize? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, because this is one celebrity friendship story that still feels like it has another chapter waiting to be written.